Hey everyone, my name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at some malicious compliance stories, so sit back, relax and enjoy. Airline pilot refuses my offer and demands more. First, a disclaimer. This is my former co-worker's story and not mine. However, for easy reading, I will tell it in first person. We work in airline crew scheduling, where our jobs essentially involve ensuring each flight is fully crewed. This requires us to strictly adhere to many rules, including aviation regulations set by the Federal Aviation Administration and collective bargaining agreements, or the CBAs, upheld by the pilot and flight attendant unions. However, some of the rules in the CBA can be a little flexible, especially when we can offer pilots additional compensation and they agree to waive certain contractual provisions in exchange. There is a CBA rule for this airline that outlines when and for how long a pilot can be on reserve, a window of time which they are essentially on call in case we need them to work, and states that if we have an assignment for them, it must start within that window or it's not contractually legal. However, we would frequently offer pilots additional compensation, usually a full day's worth of pay, if they agree to waive that provision and work trips that start outside of their reserve window. 99% of the time, pilots would accept this additional compensation. Very rarely, in extreme circumstances, we could offer even more pay, sometimes up to 200%, and only if the flight would otherwise be cancelled and cause expensive operational disruptions. I should point out, while most pilots are fantastic to work with, a certain percentage of them are very arrogant and entitled. It's an attitude that frequently occurs in the pilot population. I don't know why. I've worked in the industry for many years, and the same personality tends to appear quite often, more so at the regional airline level, less so in major or legacy airlines. Anyone else who has worked with pilots before can attest to this. The arrogant attitude is especially pronounced towards crew schedulers though, because we get to be the bad guys and make them go to work. This story concerns a pilot with this attitude/personality who was on reserve. We had a 4-day trip starting in Detroit, DTW, that we needed to find a captain for, but we did not have any DDW-based reserve captains that were legal to work it. The trip started around noon the next day, and it was currently late evening the day prior, about 18 hours before the trip started. There was a captain on reserve at that moment, and for the next 4 days, but he was scheduled for evenings, and the trip started outside his reserve window. So I called him and customarily offered him a full day's extra pay to immediately go to bed and come back the following morning for this trip. He flat out refuses my offer, and then proceeds to tell me I should offer him 200% for the entire trip instead, so basically 4 days of extra pay. I explained that it is against our procedures to offer that much extra pay just to show up early, and even so, we would have to offer that level of compensation to the other pilots in seniority order first. He adamantly and rudely proclaims that there is no way he is going to work an illegal assignment unless he gets 200%. I say okay and hang up. At that point, I came up with a brilliant plan. I look up our airline's flight schedule and find out there is a late flight leaving soon to go to Tampa, TPA, and a flight the following morning that operates from TPA back to DTW. So, I rebuild the open trip with all the same flights as before, except now it is a 5-day trip that begins with these 2 flights as deadheads. A deadhead is basically a flight that the pilot does not operate. They usually ride with the passengers or in the cockpit jump seat. So, he would fly as a passenger to Tampa, stay in a hotel, then fly as a passenger back to DTW, just in time to work the flights I had previously asked him to work. The new trip was completely legal per the CBA, and now it started comfortably with this captain's reserve window, so I assign it to him and call him back. He, of course, is not happy about it. He asks me to change it back and agrees that he will now take the extra day of pay, but I decline. The trip is legal now and I don't need to change it or offer any extra pay for him to work it. I then ice the cake a bit. I humbly and calmly offer to let him deviate off the scheduled deadheads, which normally means the pilot will not take the deadheads and will instead fly their own transportation to the city from which their first operating flight departs, which in this case is his home city. I did the math later and I found that even if he did not deviate, the cost of a non-revenue seat on both flights and paying for a hotel in TPA amounted to less than a full day's pay at his pay rate. There was no additional pay for the longer trip either, since he was getting paid for each of the 5 reserve days anyway. My malicious compliance actually saved the company a little money. I can kinda see where he was coming from demanding 200%, but if they say, no, we can't do more than an extra 100%, then just take it. Only 10 minutes? I work at a medium/small jewelry store with 8 other people. Today, my boss tried pulling one of his typical power moves by loudly berating me in front of my coworkers and customers. It didn't work out well for him. As a goldsmith, my job is to create, repair, renew, and adjust various items to customer specifications. Even though I've been in the industry for about 20 years, I'll be the first to admit to my limitations. I don't know everything and I need help sometimes. Unfortunately, my boss is a bit of an alpha and feels the need to assert dominance in the most petty ways. One of his favorite methods of demeaning people at work is to loudly declare how easy a repair is and how little time it would take him. Today, I found I had a particularly difficult repair and asked him for advice. I was told to do it the way I assumed, but then my boss noticed a few coworkers were around and decided to squeeze a little posturing into his explanation. And you just reinforced the link by the clasp before running the first axle through. I know it's damaged, but it'll work just fine. Now that he sees he has an audience, I don't know why you're even asking. This job would only take me 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Now, I knew I was going to be working on this bracelet for at least twice that time, because it required 4 cuts, 4 soldiers, 4 drilled holes, 2 pins, an acid soak, filing, polishing, and an ultrasonic bath. His intention was for people to see it took me much longer than 10 minutes, and assume I was slacking or inexperienced. The store was quiet when I answered. Really? 10 minutes? You should do it then. I'd love to learn how to be as good as you. You should know this. I'm not going to pay to teach you what you should already know. So quiet now. Everyone's listening. Even the sales girls and customers went silent to hear the rest of the exchange. Of course, I wouldn't expect you to. I'm willing to forfeit an hour of pay to learn how to do this so quickly. I'll still work after the 10 minutes. I'm actually very busy and I'll pay you 2 hours of my wages to teach me for 10 minutes. Earlier, you spent 20 minutes lecturing a coworker on the housing market in our city, so surely you can find 10 minutes to complete this repair while I watch and learn, right? The job isn't due until tomorrow. I'll stay late with everyone. We can even bring in the other goldsmiths to learn on my dime. No, I have payroll to do and, a bunch of other jobs. At this point, he's backing away and the rest of the staff have turned their heads to hide their smiles. Just do your job. How about 3 hours pay? No answer as he scurried off. It felt so good. Job ended up taking a half hour spread through the day. He avoided me until I finished. Hey, I mean, it was more of a malicious non-compliance, but it worked. I'm not immune to novocaine? Okay. First thing to know, I'm completely immune to lidocaine. Yes, this is a thing. Didn't discover this until I was an adult, and it suddenly made sense why I hated dentists so much. Ever since, I've made sure to put this on every dentist intake form, usually under allergies, closest a form usually has. Second, I chipped one of my front teeth when I was a teen. Every once in a while, I have to go in and get it resealed due to wear and tear. I was in college and the tooth needed to be resealed. I decided to try the dentist next to the campus as they had a good deal with our insurance. Standard I'm a poor college student decisions. I get into my appointment and an assistant starts prepping me for the procedure. In the chair, pop the bib, etc. She then takes the tiny needle and pokes me in the gums to freeze me up. Exposed nerves in a broken tooth are painful. As I'm sure you've already guessed, she used novocaine, not that I knew at first. She'll be assistant for dental assistant and I'm me. After waiting a few minutes for the shot to work, she starts poking around. I immediately feel sharp pain as she does and start tensing up. Hold still, I know it feels weird. Me with my fingers in my mouth, it hurts. No, that's just pressure, it's okay. No, it hurts. She takes her fingers and scrapey implement out of my mouth. The assistant, annoyed, I already numbed you, it can't hurt. It does though, really. She sighs and tells me to look up. While I do, she pokes me in the gums and I jump. The assistant, shrugging, looks like I have to give you another shot. Now, at this point, there's been zero numbing effect. I can feel everything. Are you using novocaine? Actually, it's called lidocaine. Novocaine is a trade name, but yes. I put on my intake form not to use novocaine. I'm immune to it. You're not immune to lidocaine. No one is. I'll just give you another shot. I am, and it won't work. Please use something else. Any other numbing agent works just fine. It's only novocaine that doesn't work on me. You don't know what you're talking about. Let me do my job. I sigh and get ready to argue when I remember something. I pay a flat rate, and I have nowhere to be. Cue malicious compliance. Okay. So she gives me another shot. We wait a few minutes, she makes me look at the ceiling and pokes me after a few seconds. I couldn't see her do it, but I could definitely feel it. She gives me another shot and repeats. Doesn't work. Gives me another and another. She gave me 4 shots of novocaine, and I felt every painful poke and prod, 4 needles in a row, even the small ones they use. Not fun, but I was committed. After the 5th shot, my mouth finally started to go numb. Hey, that worked. I guess it just takes a lot. There's a pause. I switched to a different agent for that shot. She sounded completely defeated. The dentist was finally called in and he was ticked. Not only had I wasted at least a half an hour of their time and pushed back a bunch of appointments, All those extra shots meant they were now taking a loss from my procedure. My payment was far less than they'd had to spend on all that novocaine. The dentist made her leave the room, did my reseal in about 15 minutes, and barely spoke a word. After we're done, I double-checked the amount I was paying. It was fine, and requested a second copy of the cost breakdown and receipts just in case. The receptionist was clearly puzzled at the length of my appointment, and why the dentist and assistant were so grouchy, but I don't think she'd been filled in. Best part? About a month later, they sent me a second bill for all those extra shots. I called them and pointed out their fee policy, was told my bill was a mistake and to ignore it. They then continued to send me a bill for those shots once a month until I moved over a year later. It never showed up on my credit history, and I definitely never went back. I'm sorry, but let's say you work at a restaurant and someone says, "Oh, I'm allergic to nuts." You're not just gonna go, "Oh, no, you're not allergic to nuts," and give them nuts, are you? Like, it works the same. Wow guys, look on screen right now. You see those two videos right there? They're pretty good. I think you should click at least one of them and watch another one.